we've got a ton of information that we're going to be covering. We're going to talk about the blades, the mats, the buttons on your machines, all of these fun things. And then once we get through all of that, then we're going to talk about actually cutting things. And I will actually cut things. You ladies here and gentlemen here can cut along with me if you would like. I do have materials set aside that we can all cut the same things at the same time, and we can talk about what we're doing. For all of you at home, if you would like to cut along with us, it's basic stuff. It's not, I don't have any crazy stuff. So we're going to talk about all the basic things as we move through those types of things. I did send everybody the spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, PowerPoint that I put together. It shows all of those buttons. So something that you can refer to on your own if you're wondering what the heck a button is. We're going to talk about being able to group things, all of those types of things, where you find different things, where you scan things, the different types of scanning. Does anybody have a question off the get?
You got stuff when I got
the one that I sent you with the link for today's class, there was 2 attachments. One was a PowerPoint and one that it said PowerPoint in the title, though I saved it as a PDF so that everybody could open it, because of course, if you don't have PowerPoint, you can't open a PowerPoint. So I saved it as a PDF so everybody would be able to open that in theory. And then the second piece that I sent you talked about the different blades and the different mats, how to recognize which was which, and then when we use which ones. So again, a different reference piece. And it's very possible that when you bought your machine, we had a conversation and we sent you that information too. So it just depends on what our conversation was when you bought your machine. So we send a lot of stuff to a lot of people. It just depends if you said you needed it or if you wanted it. And if you didn't get some other things and would like them, we are certainly happy to send more things if you need them, such as my connection things that talk about what to do with that pin, and the manuals and things like that if you had a hard time finding them. So I can share the screen here and show where to find manuals, where to connect to on Canvas Workspace, all of that information. So if you have questions that are other topics than what I'm covering, please feel free to ask them. I'm going to try to move through the PowerPoint point of topics, and then we'll get to the cutting. It'll be easier unless it's a specific question on one of those things that I have on screen at the time. If we ask all of the random questions at the end, rather than going off topic and moving around during the PowerPoint. But if you're going to forget, by all means, ask your question, because I don't want anybody to forget their question. So I know how that works because I forget things too. So let's jump in if nobody has anything to ask questions of at the beginning. I have, let's see. I need to get back to the beginning because I was going all over the place here. So we are going to, like I said, start with that PowerPoint and work our way through it. And then I'm also going to be bouncing to the machine and actually showing the buttons on the machine and any add-on pieces of, you know, how to group something and or those types of things. I've got a question over here. I had to upgrade my XJ1 to be able to get the screen to register for the Canvas Workspace. So I think what you're asking me is actually, not sure whose mom you are, but hi, Mom. I think what you're asking is about registering the actual embroidery machine to Canvas Workspace, Dean. And that makes sense because the feature that was added into the XJ1 or XE1s was in an update, excuse me. So until you had the most recent update in your embroidery machine, it didn't link with Canvas Workspace. So if that's what you're asking, we can talk about that when we'll talk about Canvas Workspace later on as well. But I believe that's what you're saying. So there is a feature that connects some embroidery machines to Canvas Workspace and our scan and cuts, and enables them to talk and send things back and forth, which is really great. They have to be the 300 series machines. So if you have a 325 or 330, an XJ1, XE1, or XP 1, 2, or 3, your machines will talk to each other. And they do have to be updated to the current software in your machines to do that. So that would be, I think, what you're asking. And if not, we'll have to talk a little bit more for me to understand what you're saying. So if that's not what you're saying, I don't know that I understand your problem. So if that is what it is, the software has to be updated to get the newest features. And we can talk about how to do updates too. I didn't actually put that in the spreadsheet or any of the information, but we can certainly cover that as well. So good morning to everybody. My name is Lisa, and I am the scan and cut go-to person here at LeBou, though I've been trying to get everybody else on board here. So there's Sarah's using hers a lot. So she's getting there. Tucker now has one. Hayden has one. So everybody here is getting more fluent and more fluent. So by all means, call anytime and ask questions when you have one. And don't call on Thursday. If it's complicated, don't call on Thursday. Great. So thank you, Dean. That was the problem. Fantastic. So yeah, updating your softwares in the machine is great. If you are connected to Wi-Fi, your machine will tell you if you need an update, which is really great. So when you turn it on, if it's on for a little while, it will look if there's an update, and it will tell you if you need one, which is also a really cool feature that they now have. So I'm going to share the screen, and we are going to start moving forward. Like I said, there is a whole lot of information, and we're going to try to keep moving forward at a pretty good pace so that you guys aren't here all day, because it's such a beautiful day that you're going to want to get back to. So, right. All right. So back to the basics. Register your machine on Canvas Workspace. What this basically means is there are a lot of great features that are available there. You don't have to have a Canvas Workspace account to use your machine. It is completely standalone. But if you want to have your larger computer screen to be able to edit and mess with different things, you would have to create that account. The number inside your embroidery machine is what you would need. That's not an embroidery machine. Inside your scan and cut is the number that you would need to register that, not the number on the back. So it's not the external serial number, it's the internal number. So I'm going to pop over real quick and show you which that actually means. So to do that, we're going to look on this camera, button, who's got the button? And we're going to go to the wrench on your screen here. And this is the settings. And inside your settings, the single arrows will allow you to page down individually.
Hey, Lisa.
Yep.
You might want to just tell everybody that you're going to be moving at a pace that they're probably not going to be able to keep up and do by themselves.
Yeah, I don't expect you to be able to push all of the buttons that I am doing. If you want to take notes, you certainly can attempt to follow along, but I'm not going to go really slow at this point, because otherwise you're going to literally be here all day. So I'm just going to try to show you where all the buttons are and how you can find everything so that you'll be able to do this when you need to, when you get to those points. So again, I accessed the wrench here on the home screen. And then once we have that, we've got single arrows or double arrows. The double arrow will take you all the way to the bottom or to the top. The single arrows are going to go one page at a time. So you can see there's tons of settings. right? This is the only page you get all of the settings. Once you get into any other page, the only settings that will show up using the wrench are the settings that are actually to do with what's happening on that page. So for instance, are you using a 12 by 12 mat? Are you using inches or millimeters? What your cut settings are if you're on the cut page. But this home page is the only place that you can access literally everything. So if you're trying to get this information here, you can't get to it if you're in some other section of the machine. This is the only place that you can get to all of the information. Right here where it says no, that is your number, NO period. And then this digit number right here, this is your machine number that it's going to need to register it with Canvas Workspace. That's the one that it's talking about. Right below that is your version number. This is the software I was talking about just a few minutes ago. So if you are having trouble registering your machine on Canvas Workspace with your embroidery machine, this number in your embroidery machine or your, thank you, your embroidery machine or your scan and cut needs to always be at that most current one to give you the most features. So sometimes Brother will find a error in code and they'll fix it through that. Sometimes they're adding something, which is also really great. The one that Dean was talking about in particular was a really great update. That was a really wonderful thing. That was the ability for these two machines to be able to talk to one another. So sometimes it's an added feature and sometimes it's just a little background thing that you really won't notice a difference. But that version right here is where that's going to come to.
Is that the version we're supposed to be at?
Oh, I have no idea because this is the store machine. I have absolutely no idea and I don't want to check that now. I can check and let you guys know before we leave today. I will let you guys know what the software version. Sarah's running that for you right now. It is on all the time and we are connected to the internet here. So I'm going to stab in the dark that it is. However, we don't always have it on for a long time, which would mean that it's not necessarily checking long enough. But as long as we're here, we can download and put an update on a USB and pull it in through here, or we can update wirelessly if you are connected to your Wi-Fi. Very, very easy to do. And the update button is right there that you can see whether you can update your version or not. So that is updating and connecting to Canvas Workspace. I'm going to switch screens again. All right, so make sure that you log into your Wi-Fi to do that because you will need to connect your machine to your Wi-Fi to be able to connect it to the Canvas Workspace itself. Those are fairly simple. Once you get the Wi-Fi connected, it will take you through the steps. So you don't need to be connected to the Wi-Fi here at the shop. You can be, but you don't need to be for today's purposes. We're not going to be doing anything that you need to be connected to the Wi-Fi here. And when we have everybody connected to the Wi-Fi, it drags the Wi-Fi. So I do request that you don't all try to connect to our Wi-Fi. So please don't attempt to do that today. We are going to talk about the different things that are built-ins in the machine now. So again, Canvas Workspace is not required, but it is a huge benefit. There is both an online version and a downloadable desktop version. And that desktop version gives you some features that the online version does not. If I am going to be using Canvas Workspace, I generally use the desktop version at this point, unless I absolutely have to use the web version. I do have a handout on Canvas Workspace. I will be glad to send that. I didn't attach that. I know a lot of you already have that. I've done entire classes on Canvas Workspace, so I know a lot of you already have that, but I can send that. Would you guys like me to send that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I will make a note and I will, yep, I hear it in my ear too. So no problem. I will, she's got a note for me. I like notes. Notes are good. All right. And basically it walks through what buttons on Canvas Workspace do what as well. So, and and I will do another class on Canvas Workspace at some point. I don't like to do those too close together because then people get annoyed with me because
You just did the live too.
Yep, we did. There is also a live. Maybe I will find the link to that as well and include the link to the YouTube channel video when I send that. So I will find that for you and link that as well. All right. So in your machine, there's so much in there. So I use what's in the machine, but I don't use what's in the machine a lot. I create things and I bring things in on a USB most of the time for me personally, but there is a ton of stuff in there. So we're going to talk about bringing things in and we're going to talk about what's already in there. All right. So to retrieve data, you've got that button at the bottom of the screen, and that is going to then bring you to the picture that's on the right side there. It's going to give you the option of machine memory. It's going to give you the option of wireless, your USB or corded. So you got lots of ways to bring different things into your scan and cut. The wireless is if you are sending from your Canvas Workspace over into that's that button there. That's what we're talking about right there. All right. So those are the 4 ways that you can retrieve data: USB, machine memory, wireless, which is coming from Canvas Workspace, or an actual corded, which would be kind of like your computer is a USB. That's kind of what that means. All right. Inside the machine, we have a lot of different patterns. So if you hit that pattern button, once you go into that, you've got so many built-in shapes. The number of them is there's an actual number, but it's different for all of the different machines. So the way that you know whether you're in like the final drop down menu, if you will, is if you start seeing numbers. So if you see on here, we've got the triangle, the hexagon, and then the wavy edged square. And then we have the square and the circle. And then the next one has all those numbers. The numbers mean there's no more menus behind those shapes. Those are the final, that's the final menu drop. Okay. So when we select one of those, we would be selecting the actual designs. We're not getting into another menu item. So once you get into those, you've got pretty much every basic shape imaginable, including puzzle shapes and Christmas tags or birthday, tags to put on gifts and things. I mean, there's just about everything in there. Arrows, all kinds of crazy things. Once you get into the more decorative things, you're going to get multicolored designs as well as just crazy shapes. You can have these being out of vinyls, fabrics, papers, whatever you want them to be. Unless you have that new link into your embroidery machine, if you're using them as applique, you're going to be doing a standard sewing applique to applique those down. So if you're cutting those out of fabric, unless you have that brand new link, I'm sorry. Thank you. See,
hand gesture, waiting room.
All right. I can't look in too many places at once. There's just all over the place. So the ability to use all of these shapes, I do use these because there's so many different things in here and you can use them in so many different ways. As you see, if you have a Disney version, you also have a Disney menu. And inside the Disney menu, you would then have breakdown of different options as well. Inside those menus, you have, if you have a 330 or a 230, you also would have some rhinestone version options and some drawing options as well. So there's tons of different things that are built into the machine. All right, word patterns. I love the word patterns. These are phenomenal because they're connected. What I mean by connected is if you cut out the word smile that you see there, there's not 5 letters that are separate. It's one complete piece. They have connected that, and everything in there is built like that. So you don't have random dots of eyes that are floating out there in middle of the space that you have to find ways to connect all of the time. Sometimes you will, but they try to connect them anytime that it will work. And you have some different menus there. The border patterns, if you are a scrapbooker, these are wonderful for the sides of your 12-inch scrapbook page. They look beautiful on the outsides of those. We did a leather cork. Actually, we didn't have leather at that point. We did cork, but it would work with leather too. And we made bracelets out of these patterns. So we cut these out of cork. I added circles. We did welding. So you guys learned how to weld in there too. And we added snaps to the circles and we made bracelets out of one of these patterns. So you can make these be whatever you want them to be, but they have some phenomenal things in there and you can adjust the size. Was there a question? Oh, heard something. Okay. And then the fonts. Fonts are also great. Unless you move them together and weld them, they are going to be all separate letters, but you do have upper, lower, all of your numbers, punctuations on all of those things. If you use your Canvas workspace, you have additional ones on your desktop version because it will pull in anything that's in your computer, which is why I like the desktop version. So lots and lots of font options when you're doing that. But they did add a lot more font options in the most recent versions of Scan and Cuts as well. When we page down to the next page, we have drawing things, we have larger, little bit more specialized fonts, and we have quilting. This quilting thing is really, really cool. I want to take just a second and show you guys what the quilt is, because I don't know that it really explains itself by my just saying so. So if we go in the quilt menu, there's tons of squares here. So you can buy pattern after pattern after pattern of quilt squares and you know, entire actual quilts, right? But if you don't want to have to go buy a new pattern and you want something all specific, we can go in here and we can say, okay, I really like that one. Well, oh, wait a minute. There's my numbers. Now I know I'm actually in a square. So I can choose one of these squares and you can see the different colors here indicate different actual parts of that pattern. So whichever one that is I like, it will give me the pieces that I need to complete that quilt square. I can tell it how big I want that square to be finished in. I can adjust that. So if I only wanted that to be 12, I could adjust that. If I wanted it to be 14, let's just do that because we're closer to 14. So if any of you are quilters out there, this is a phenomenal resource for you to not have to ever buy a quilt pattern again. All right. So I can tell it what I want my finished quilt square to be. All right. I know that I need 3 different fabrics to finish this particular square because I have 3 different colors here. When I tell it I'm done there, I can see that I need 3 different shapes of that peachy orange. I need 2 of the blue and I need 2 of the white. So of the A shape, I need 4 of that to finish that particular square. Now, if I'm doing a table runner, maybe I want 3 of these or something like that. So I know I would actually need 12 of those if I was doing that. I can add that to my page. I can multiply that out to whatever it is that I need to finish. And I can add that and it says, nope, you can't do that because it's too smart for me. All right, so I'm going to do 2. And nope, I can't do that.
It's not you 4 max.
It just won't let me. All right, but here it is. I've got those 4. But you guys, can you see that? It's got the, what is that? It's got the seam allowance built into it. I don't have to figure that out. It's done all of that for me. And it will do all of that even for those other shapes. So I go in there and I cut those and then it'll say, hey, there was more pieces. Did you want to go back and cut those other pieces? And you're like, well, of course I do. And it'll take you back to that ABCD page and you choose the next piece and you cut those. And then it'll say, hey, did you want to cut the rest of them? And you're like, of course I do. And you can continue that until you get all of those pieces for that pattern that you're doing. So it adds in the seam allowance automatically for you. And you don't have to do any quilt math ever again. Yay. Exactly. Yay. So I just think that is a really, really neat thing that they have put in here. And again, you can adjust the size of your finished squares, and then it will refigure everything for you automatically. Really, really cool. I don't like to do quilt math, so that is a really cool thing for me. That is, I let Sarah do that, but you know, she has days she doesn't want to do that either. So when people come in and they're like, okay, how much do I need? We're like,
How did you exit out of it?
I'm sorry.
How did you exit?
I hit the home button and it takes me back to the home screen. So if I had something on screen selected and I am in my menu and I hit home, it'll ask, did you mean to hit that? And you just say yes, and it'll take you back to the home page. So that is, again, in your quilt menu there. And you've got, again, there's no numbers on screen. So each of these are menus of different types. So these are hexagon shapes. You've got just oodles of different types of pieces here to choose from. So lots and lots of things that are built in to your machine here. Great. Is there a list of what name of the quilt designs there are? I do believe there is a design list that you can download. I've never actually downloaded that, but let me look into that. And if there is, I will attempt to find the link and attach that as well. I
got it.
Okay. My note taker's in the back. I like having a note taker. That works well for me. All right. So these are some specialized different pieces that we've got in here. So I do invite you to push the buttons. Outside of that, I really can't tell you. There's just some really, really great stuff in here. Way more than you ever knew is really what I have to tell you. So you've got Greek letters if you have anybody that's in a sorority. There's just so much wonderful, fun stuff in here. You've got actual scrapbook page layout pieces in here. If you're a scrapbooker, you've got picture mats where it actually does the little cuts to tuck your corner of your photo in the corner here. All kinds of different things. There is a lots of crazy stuff in here. I can never remember where everything is the problem because there's so much. There's all of those tags that are specialized shapes, and there are basic shapes in addition in your actual shapes tool feature. These are tags as well, little door hook pieces. Is that the one I was just in? There's something I'm looking for, obviously. Maybe it's not obvious. One of these has, I can never remember which one it is. The felt flowers that we did a class on oodles ago. And we talked about the rotary tool and all of that. And there's an actual rotary cut where it does all of those and then you fold them. There's a built-in in the machine and it's hidden very well, obviously. So much that's in here. And I bet most of you didn't have any idea how many different things were in there because you didn't take the time, which most of us don't, because we all have a specific idea of what we want to do when we sit down in front of our machines. So, you know, we have a very specific, this is what I need you to do. And we sit down and we do that and then we turn it off. So play with it. All right. So Cindy, the answer to, is there a list of what the name of the designs? There is unfortunately not a name, but there is a list of the pictures. So you can, if you look in the, like the manual of the designs, there is a picture of all of them, which you can locate all of the manuals on brother-usa.com. You can download every manual and design guide and everything there. And I can link you guys that list with no problem. but there is no name to that. So thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. All right. So like I said, the amount of things that are built in, I think is in general missed by many, because it's just, we're all very project oriented when we sit down in front of our machines. And, you know, it's the same thing when we do embroidery or whatever. We're very, you know, maybe when we first get a machine, we might play a little bit, but even then we're not going to go through every page on there, you know? So, all right. So, let's talk about editing, because that is something that you all do, right? No matter what, we're going to have to edit something at some point. So, in the reference point here, I have chosen that godforsaken triangle that we all have had to cut at some point in time in our life, right? So, when you select your design, this is in that basic shapes, and it is number 37. So if you are a half square triangle person, your machine can cut those for you if you would like it to. And you can see over here, again, it gives me that size option. For whatever reason, when I started taking pictures to do this, our machine had been moved into millimeters. I don't think in millimeters. So I'm showing you right here how you can resize, and then, oh, wait a minute. How do I change back into inches? So it's there. You can hit the wrench tool on the bottom there, right by the set, and it will, again, show you right there how to change that. So if you remember back when we first sat down, it is only going to show you what you can apply to that page. This is what I was talking about. So the wrench at the beginning gave us pages upon pages upon pages of different settings that we could change. Here we get 3. One of those is inches or millimeters. So we can change that very, very simply, because we don't have to find it. It literally just gives that to us right there, which is really nice. So I was able to change back over to the inches. And then you can see that 100 millimeters is not actually 4 inches exactly. It's actually 3.94. So I changed that to the 4 inches that I was looking for. And then I hit set, and it pops up on screen. So what we can do then is add in a seam allowance, if that's what we're doing was a quilting piece. So to go into our editing tools, we would go to edit, and then you get to the screen on the top right-hand corner, which is then going to say object edit. So if you were a CM user, you probably are like, you know, this looks really weird because there's more screens here than what we had before. So it's just an additional button. We have to push that object edit button to get to the editing tools. So one more push, and then the buttons start to look a little bit more familiar with what we had before if you are a multiple purchaser of cutting machines. All right, so the size adjustments are going to be that top left button on our screen there. And we can then adjust. What we have to remember is our adjustments are defaulted to resize equally, which means if we raise or lower the size, it's going to change all sides equally unless we tell it we don't want it to. All right, which means our aspect ratio is default locked. If we need to change that, we can. That's going to be those arrows down a little bit. And you can see that in the upper left-hand corner here. And I'm pointing to that. We've got a fraction with the arrows there. That is your aspect ratio. It is defaulted, again, locked, which means all 4 sides are going to adjust equally. If you want it to be fatter instead of equally or taller or whatever, you need to activate that button, and it will then turn blue, and then you can just make it taller or just make it wider. That's the only way that that will happen, is by turning on that button. The next thing is to multiply them on screen. That's going to be the center top button, and we can then just say how many we want on screen. You guys saw it will yell at you if you try to put too many things on the screen. So we can multiply those out there. The top right button is for rotating your design. You will get multiple rotation options, 90, 10, or 1 degree to the right or to the left. I use this if I'm trying to, fit more items on my mat to save fabric or vinyl or whatever it is. Of course, you always do want to pay attention. If you are cutting on something with grain, make sure that you're only turning something to the way that it's going to make sense for whatever it is you're cutting. If it is paper or vinyl, it doesn't matter. But if you are cutting fabric, make sure that you're paying attention so that you're not going, with the pattern that's going to then screw up, or a grain that's going to be the wrong direction for whatever project that you're working on. The second row begins with seam allowance. So we talked about being able to add a seam allowance. The seam allowance is a really great thing. It will auto add if you are in that quilt menu that we talked about a little bit ago. It will not auto add it anywhere else. So if we are pulling in from the shapes menu, this half square triangle, and we need to add our seam allowance, we need to go into this button. When we turn that on, we will then see that add on. All right, we can adjust the seam allowance. So for us quilters, we have a 1/4 inch option. That is the default. So that black box that's around the 1/4 inch means that's the default size, but we can change that to be many, many different numbers. If you are a clothing sewer and you're using this to sew clothing patterns, you can add in a 5/8 seam allowance. It will do that as well. It's a little bit harder to add. I'm so sorry, excuse me, to do sewing patterns. At least for me, I'm bigger than my cutting mat. So, patterns for pieces of clothing for that is, little bit harder to cut out on my scan and cut. But depending upon what it is that you're doing, you can add a 5/8 in seam allowance. So you can toggle through that width and change that to be whatever desired size that you are looking for. All right. If you are able to see that, I'm not sure that you really are. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. So with the red line around there, I'm not sure that you can still quite tell, but those corners are blunted. Can you guys see that? That is one of my favorite things about the way that it does these triangles. When it adds that seam allowance, it doesn't actually make a point. It actually gives you a 1/4 inch, but it gives you a blunted point instead of a sharp point, so that when you're adding those, you actually get the exact points that you need for sewing. And this is actually, I think, when I really realized what my problem was with quilting was that I wasn't cutting right. The first time I made a quilt piece from here, and I was like, oh, I'm not cutting things well. So, when I took my first quilt class, we didn't really talk about cutting being important. It wasn't part of the class. And we've talked about this before in our lives on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, whatever days that it was. And I really didn't enjoy quilting because things didn't come out like I wanted them to. And I had a perfect 1/4 inch seam. I worked really, really hard on that. And things really didn't come out like I expected them to. And I didn't understand why. And I thought, this is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I made one and I quit. And then I saw these pieces and I was just like, that's the difference. Look at that. And I found some really cool rulers. The Quilter Select rulers really keep your fabric from shifting, so you can get that accurate cut when you're cutting yourself, and makes all the difference in the world when you're cutting accurately for those pieces to line up, dang it. And so this makes those pieces so easy to sew together. It's just this brilliant thing. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that it makes them easy to sew as well as cutting them well. It makes them easy to sew too. So anyway, that is the seam allowance. And then it will add in that you can take that and rotate and have them sitting into one another so that you're saving fabric. If, again, your pattern allows you to do that, or the pattern of your fabric allows you to do that. So the mirror image, which is the second, and in the center there, second row in the center, is mirror image. You can see that the triangle is flipped. This button is extremely important if you are working with vinyl. Vinyl is something that you're going to need to mirror image on a pretty regular basis. When we get to cutting later on, we will be using that and you'll see exactly why. The next button is for fill settings. That's going to be a drawing feature. The drawing feature isn't something that I use very often, but I certainly have. I've been making cards, and so I do use the fill feature when if and when I do a drawing sentiment on the inside of the card. It is got the option of different patterns for your fill. I don't like a lot of those fills. I wish they would come up with some new ones. Wish that would be in one of those updates, but they haven't really changed any of those. So I generally am either the solid fill or no fill, one or the other. But that does give you the option of that. You can turn that on and off. And again, that is generally used for drawing. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question.
Third line down on the left is drawing additional lines. So this is functional from a drawing perspective, like literally with a pen. It's also effective if you're trying to make like rings of different things, like with paper or vinyl or things like that. So you're trying to make actual spaced out rings around that shape, or rings of whatever shape that is. You can actually add a line around or multiple lines around whatever it is that you're cutting. So that has the ability to add X numbers of lines, and then you can change the distance between those lines as well. So you can change that. The second line down there is offset lines. So that is kind of, they're not quite the same thing, but the offset line would be either inside or outside the main line of your design. And again, you can change the distance of that line as well. The one on the third row down all the way to the right is a very specific tool. You will only be using that if you wanted dotted lines. You can use this slightly out of its intended purpose if you were trying to do like maybe a fold line or something like that. You could use it for that, but it's not its intended purpose. All right, so what this actually is to convert your line to a dotted line. That's what this button does. And what this is for the pierced paper design. So if you have the pierced paper tool, it actually is a little like stabbing tool that punches a hole to create a pattern. And it will convert your pattern into little dots to create a rose or a heart or whatever in pierced lines. It is really popular in paper, like invitations for weddings or something like that. It's a fancy look. Again, you could maybe use this as a fold line so you get like a perforated area, but it's not its intended use. It is a pretty specific piece. You can turn that on and off. And that is, like I said, pretty specific to that particular kit. The very last row on this is for grouping, welding, and positioning. And until we have multiple things on screen, I can't show you what those are for. So we're going to work on that in a little bit here. So we are definitely going to talk about grouping here. So how about we talk about grouping? All right. Anybody have any questions at this point? All right. So when we have designs that come in that have more than one, in this case, just for ease, red box. So if you've got more than one part to a cut file, that means that if you moved it, it wouldn't all move together. Okay, that's the main thing to think about here. So what we need to do is be able to connect all of those parts before we move anything or resize anything so that everything shifts, resizes, moves, mirror images, whatever we're trying to do to it, and it all goes together. Okay. If we want to be able to do more than one thing on the screen at one time, we need to be able to move that out of the top left corner, right? Because everything always loads in that top left corner. So if it has more than one red box, we don't have the ability to move it out of that corner in its original shape. So we need to group it. So the first thing that we're going to do after we've set it to the screen is we're going to push the edit button. And then we're going to push the button that has the 3 red squares that is above the object edit button. All right, so here is our 3 red squares. You can see I have 3 items on the screen, but I only have 1 red square, right? But if I want to do something to all 3 of those, I need to be able to group them. So if I tap the 3 red squares, I then get my grouping tool up. I have 2 different options. The one on the left will bring up the arrows. And let me see if I did. All right, so the arrows here allow me to exclude items on the screen. So if I have more than 1 item on the screen already, but I need to group a specific section of the screen, I can exclude parts of the screen by using the arrows. All right. If I have the button on the right selected, it will automatically select everything that I have on the screen. Everybody with me? I can repeat that again. All right. So we need to, once we have our design pulled up, hit the edit button, hit the group button, which is the 3 red squares. We have 2 options. To get this, you have to have more than 1 cut piece on your screen. If you only have 1 thing on screen, this isn't going to do anything. All right. So if you just threw 1 item on the screen to try to follow along with me, this isn't going to work for you. Just FYI. All right. If you're trying to follow along. All right. So the options here are able to select specific sections. All right. So I can arrow into just part of my screen, or I can select all items on my screen by selecting the box on the right. When I've selected all the items on the screen, they all are now red, which is what I want. Okay. I select Object Edit, and now these guys are highlighted when they weren't before, when we were looking at that previous screen, right? So here's that grouping button that I was telling you about. When I tap that, it turns blue, and I have a red box around all 3 of my squares instead of individual pieces. So I've grouped the items together. So now if I want to resize them, I'm resizing everything equally. Okay. If I mirror image it, it mirror images the whole thing, not just one part. So the grouping is extremely important when you have something that comes in multiple cut files, and it will happen a lot. All right, I'm going to switch back because my sample on here shows better, in my opinion, than here. All right. So on here, you can see that there's only 1 red square, right? All right, 1 red square. So I hit edit, I hit the 3 red squares. I talked about the option of being able to choose with the arrows. All right. I don't generally need to use that super often, But every once in a while, I've got something else hanging out on my mat that I need to exclude from my group. So if you've got a design already on there and you need to select something specifically that you've just brought in, then you want to use the arrows and move to only that section that you've got in the upper left-hand corner or whatever. All right. Generally, I'm hitting that button on the right. And what happens is you get all items on the screen selected. So you guys know I like Wonder Woman. That's not news, right? So here's my Wonder Woman design. The tabs of the underneath W aren't attached to the top W. So they're separate cut files. They're not attached. But if I want to move it, they won't move with the top W. So I need to group them together so that they will move all together and I don't have to resize everything separately or whatever, right? So to do that, I group them all together. So I select everything on my mat and then I hit OK. Then I hit Object Edit to go to my grouping tool. And that's this button right here. Once you've hit that, it turns blue. You guys see that? The circle and the square inside the square is highlighted and it turns blue. But if you look at my Wonder Woman logo, it now has one red box all the way around it instead of 4 different red boxes. It's now one item. So I can resize it. I can mirror image it. I can move it around on my mat. It's all going to move together instead of separately. When you purchase cut files, when you bring them in from wherever you got them from, because they came from a vendor that came with a cut file, they're going to come in as separate files a lot of the time. You have flower petals that are 6 different cut files. They're not one flower. They're 6 different petals that make up one flower. It's going to happen. This is how you make them one file so that when you move them, they cut all together. Okay. So this is going to be something that you use on a regular basis. It happens all the time. Now I've got that all goofy and I can't get back to my normal. There we go. All right. So grouping, that's that first tab on that object edit in that bottom row. Super, super important. You're going to use it all the time. All right. Edit. Object edit. Those are the buttons that you need to be getting really, really familiar with. Those 3 red squares need to become your friend. You're going to use them a lot. All right. Any questions on grouping? If you ungroup, you hit that button, it's no longer blue. Your items are no longer grouped. Yep. So scanning. Scanning is something that we do to create designs. That is what sets this machine apart from everything else, in my opinion, in a really big way, is the ability to take a piece of paper and turn it into a cut file, an image that was nothing, and make it whatever you want it to be. So I do this a lot, whether I do it in my computer or I do it on the machine. The features that we have here are mirrored in our Canvas workspace. So if you can do it here, you can pretty much do it in Canvas workspace as well. Whichever place you are more comfortable at is going to be where I suggest that you do those things. So if you're more comfortable on a computer, then you should do that there. You have that feature available to you to create there as well. What we have here is a couple different things. So give me 1 second and I'm going to show you real quick. When we hit the scan button, we have 3 different options. All right. We've got direct cut, we have scan to cut data, and we have scan to USB. The scan to USB is something you're not going to use very often. It's there. It's a great feature if you don't have a scanner in your house and, you know, your accountant calls and says, I need you to scan me this and send me this because I can't do your taxes without this. And you're like, what am I going to do? I need to scan this. You could scan it here. It would create a JPEG of, which is a picture of whatever you scanned in there. And then you could email them that file and then your taxes could get done. All right. That is what this does. It scans whatever you put on the mat. It makes it a picture and it saves it to your USB. That's what that does. It has absolutely nothing to do with creating a cut file. Nothing at all. It takes a picture. That's what it does. It takes a picture of your mat and it saves it to your USB. It creates a JPEG of, that's what the file extension, that's what it does. That's all it does. It will never do anything different. That section right there, that's what it does. Nothing to do with creating cut files. It makes the picture. So that's all we're going to say about that guy, because it doesn't really have anything to do with what we're doing here. All right. So that's what he does. These two are very different. All right. This one here, direct cut, means it's going to take and find your file edges, whatever, create that file, and then cut it immediately. It is not going to save a cut file. So if you are looking to cut something out of a piece of fabric, so you've got some really pretty flowers on fabric and you want it to find and cut out that flower. So you want a fussy cut. Maybe there's llama fabric, maybe there's Christmas fabric, and you want that Christmas tree cut out of that and you want to apply it onto something else. Doesn't matter what it is that you want, but you want something cut out. Maybe you are a stamper and you stamped all of these stamps onto paper and you want it to find the outside edge of your stamp, cut it so that you can then put those on your cards or whatever it is that you're doing. It's going to find the edges and cut it, but it is not going to create a cut file for you to save and use on a future date. All right, direct cut. Because it's going to direct cut, you have to have that fabric, paper, whatever, on a cutting mat. You do not want to scan that in your scanning mat. Okay, because there's no option to unload and reload it in onto a cutting mat. So this one has to happen on a cutting mat. This one can happen on a cutting mat, on a scanning mat, whichever cutting mat, doesn't matter. All right, either way. The direct cut is a wonderful feature. The tools that you have from here to here vary slightly. All right. Any questions on the differences between what one does versus the other? All right. Well, let's talk about that. All right. So with direct cut, again, we are, sorry, guys. When we select that scan, you guys all saw what pops up. This is the screen that you get when you select that. With the direct cut selected, you will have the ability to bring in a scanned image from your machine. So you're going to scan it in right at the machine on the mat, or you can bring something in from Canvas Workspace. So you can actually have something sent over from Canvas Workspace. I don't usually do that. I've done it once just to say that I've done it, but that's it. Usually if I'm cutting something, it's literally, I want to do it. This is what I've got. This is what I want to cut. I'm doing it right on my cutting mat. When you select, in my case, I generally always hit, like I said, the machine. It's going to scan your mat. That's what this page right here is showing you. The wrench on this is going to give you the option to choose from color or black and white. I always recommend that you start in black and white, as does the manual. And then if you're not getting what you are looking for, then you can adjust from there. You can see I have black and white mode here. There's another section in color mode. You'll see the differences in what you have there. This is the selection. So it's very, very clear whether you're choosing black and white or color. Your scan area is what mat you're using. Are you using a 12 by 12 or are you using a 12 by 24 inch mat? All right. Pretty straightforward. So that's the wrench options that you have there. So we're going forward with having a black and white. We're going to hit start. You can see it literally takes and scans in my image. Notice I chose black and white, but I have a color picture. That doesn't mean that you have a black and white picture. It's just the mode that's being selected. All right. So you're going to scan to see the image, and the image appears on screen. We press OK, which means, yep, I like what I see. All right. Let me go back for just a second. Read that cloud, because that cloud is super important. Use originals that are clearly drawn with no gradation, not extremely intricate designs. There are limits, okay? I can't tell you how many people come in with things and, I couldn't get this to work, and they bring me these crazy drawings, and it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's never going to be able to do that. That's a picture of you. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little, but you get my idea here, okay, guys? So you have to be realistic on what you're asking this machine to be able to see and create a cut image of. All right. This isn't a rocket scientist image machine able to take that image and be able to do that. It's a computer, but it's got limitations. So you need very clear lines and not a lot of shading. What I mean by shading is it needs to be, so ink is really easy to take and have, when you're drawing with a pencil, and you can shade a little bit here, and it's darker here than it's lighter over here, and so on and so forth. So that really cute crayon image that your grandchild made, and you want to create that, it's going to have a really hard time finding it. It might be really clear lines, but some are lighter and darker. It's not going to be able to see those lighter lines because it can't see the gradation of where one starts and the next begins, and the blending. The blending parts are impossible for it to see. Thread, same thing. So when we're asking our machines to be able to blend and gradiate thread, it's almost impossible. It's the same thing with this. So we just have to be realistic in what we're putting in to the machine. It will not be able to do you. All right. It'll have a rough time doing your dog, because think about all of the different shades of fur that are on your dog, pictures of people and that kind of thing. It's never going to be able to do. Clip art, wonderful. All of those kinds of things that you got off of the internet of silhouette images. Those, I like to use that actual word when I'm searching for pictures of things that I want to cut, is silhouette or black and white image of, because you get really good crisp images of whatever it is that you're looking for. So if you kind of think in that terminology, you'll have a lot more success in what you're trying to get a cut file of.
So if you're doing fabric, how does that work?
So fabric is, it's only going to be able to find, you're talking about being able to find an image in the fabric?
Yeah, because there's other images in there.
So if you're finding an image that is a clear flower inside, the edges of the flower, you should be able to see the petals. Or, I'm just using that as that example, because I happen to have a flower on screen here. That's what popped in my head. But it does a pretty good job of finding if it's a clear image. Usually the background color is different enough from whatever we're trying to pull out that it does a pretty nice job. If it is just chaos of flower on flower on flower, it won't be able to find the edge of the one flower that you want. But if it's a clear, I want that flower off of that whole thing, it actually does a really nice job. And the addition of the fabric mat and the fabric blade made that so much better. The preciseness that we can get with that blade, it's beautiful, and what it can cut out. Being able to find the parts and pieces that will cut well. I have had a lot of people that are stampers wanting to use this feature. That's like why they bought a machine, and get frustrated because the edges of their stamps aren't clear. If any of you have stamped before, you know that's a thing, right? You know, either because you didn't press well or just because the stamp itself doesn't have clear edges to it. So when we get to that point, I'll give suggestions as to maybe how you can fix those types of things. So there's ways around it. It's just a matter of how bad do you want what you want? And then we'll talk about how you can make those things happen. So once you get those originals on the screen, you're going to press OK. What you want to do is get rid of all of the excess junk. So on a cutting mat, you can see all of the cut lines. So if you look at that top right picture, all of those little lines that you see are different random cut lines that are in the mat, left over from previous cuts and things that are still in there, and it's picking up all of it. So that's how good our scanner is. It does a really nice job of seeing what's there. And we don't want those cut lines in the cut. We only want the edges of the flower. So this is another area where you're going to drag those arrows and pull them in to only get the area that you want to cut. All right, so we're going to pull those arrows in and limit only the area that we want. Once you have that, you're going to select preview, and then it's going to show you just that line around the area that you're looking for. So in this area, for this particular piece, is just the outline of the blue flower. So we can see that it's just right on the edges of the flower. If you want to adjust, you can edit. So you do have some playing power. So this is one area where you go, okay, it's not exactly what I want. Let me play a little bit. So we can hit edit. And if you have some random lines, I guess are better words than, so if this were a piece of fabric and we had some little pieces that it saw and wanted to do a cut line, as long as they're not attached to the main line, we can delete them. If it's attached to the main line, if we delete it, we are deleting the main line. So we can't do anything about it, unfortunately. Fortunately, if it's attached to the main line and it cuts it, it's not going to do anything, and it doesn't matter when we get to the main cut. It's just still going to cut out our flower and we're good to go. But if we are looking for deleting things, we can take out any random parts that we have there. What we can also do is adjust the outline distance. So if you're a stamper and you want to have that 1/8 of an inch distance around your stamp, so you have that little bit of a frame. If this happens to be paper, if you wanted to have that edge, if it's fabric and you don't want to see that outside edge because you don't want to see the outside fabric background color, you can actually move it in. So you can make it negative and you can move the line in. For that same thing, if you are a stamper or doing something that doesn't have a clear outside edge, you can create that line, especially if it's on paper, but you can do this on fabric as well. Take a black thin Sharpie and draw the line, or a pen, doesn't matter, and draw. We'll just use the flower as an example. Draw a line around it on the outside of it. So it's not on that line, but draw outside of it, because we can go negative on the outline distance and it would cut on the inside of the line that you drew. So give it the line that you want it to see. So if your line isn't clear enough, provide one for it. So if you want it to cut somewhere that's a fussy cut, that you don't want to have to maneuver with your scissors around crazy little tiny petals and whatever's that it happens to be. Maybe it's a tree and you've got little things that you just don't want to have to deal with. You can draw a line with a Sharpie around it, tell it to go inside that line, and it will draw and cut inside of your line. So provide the line for it. If it's not finding what it's needing on its own, help it. Give it the line for it. It's that simple. You can just change the rules, give it the line that it needs instead. So there's no need to be frustrated by it. It does add another step to what you need to do. Yes, I understand that. But if your image is not good enough for it to see those edges, it takes what, 10, 20 seconds to draw that line? I don't think that's too much to ask to give it what it needs. So, all right. So you can add in that you can see a little bit better. I've given it that little white edge around the flower now instead of being right on there. And that is what this allows you to do. You can also move that line in. So a negative would move it inside the flower instead of outside the flower. So that is what we have the ability to adjust and do what we want. Again, this is going to cut immediately. It is not going to give you the option to save this line. It's going to say, okay, you done playing? Let's cut it. All right. So it has to be on a cutting mat. It cannot be on your scanning mat to do this. So as soon as you are done playing and you hit okay, it's going to ask for what do you want to do, to cut, to draw, to whatever. If you're drawing, it's fine. You can draw, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to draw at this point. But there you go. So we're going to press cut and it will then cut that. You have cut settings that you can adjust just like we always do. We'll talk about those more when we get to the actual live cutting towards the end. And you can see that it's doing its thing. And there is the cut that happened as we did that. This is, again, direct cut. And we're going to change into color mode here. I've got a piece of fabric here. This has butterflies all over it. This is pink butterflies on pink fabric. I'm framing the image. So I'm just picking one butterfly out of the many. All right. I'm ignoring object sizes, which means I'm saying anything that's smaller than this size, I don't want you to think about. So basically, if it's a tiny little line, just ignore it. So I don't have as many things I need to trash. We talked about trashing random lines last time. I'm telling it to ignore things that I don't need to deal with. I still have the ability to edit. All right. So I'm still going through all of those things. What I have here is the ability to go through and get rid of those trash lines. So I'm actually showing you trashing a few of those pieces this time. I didn't have any on the last one because there weren't any excess lines on my white background. This time I actually have little pieces. So you were asking about, when you have a whole bunch of other things around it on the fabric, what it might look like. This is, you can see the little red dots around my butterfly line. Can you see that? So here, I've got little bits. I'm using my select arrow to toggle through, and I'm hitting the trash can to delete anything that's not the butterfly. It literally, so I'm hitting the arrow to go through the different red spots that are not my butterfly, and then I hit the trash can and it takes away the cut file. So I'm only going to have the butterfly cut file there. So basically I'm going through the color mode. So it's going, it's just seeing things differently. If you have no luck with one mode, you can change and try in the other mode and it sees things a little bit differently. I always start with the black and white mode. And then if it didn't see enough, I will change into the color mode. I hit the trash can and then okay to delete and get rid of everything until I have just the cut line that I want. Again, you can change your outline distance if you would like. You can add additional lines if you would like. I don't like to do that, but you can. And then again, we hit the please select. So this is an example of fabric doing the exact same things I did with the blue flower, but this time I used color mode with the colored fabric and went through, deleted any excess lines. And now we're going to cut out on fabric. So you can see I fussy cut a pink butterfly with pink fabrics, but they did have a pretty clean line around the outside edge. But I could have given it a line. If I couldn't find a line, I could have given it one. All right. You can see I'm using my fabric blade, which is that tan. And you can see at the top of this picture here, I am using my fabric mat. So I just have that fabric stuck right to the mat. All right. So that is direct cut, scanning, finding what I want to cut out and cutting it immediately, not saving any files. Stamping people, I generally actually recommend that they save it because you usually cut stamps more than once. So you could get a cut file and then just drag it over top of your stamp, save it and work with it more than one time. Scan to cut data allows you to create files that you can do more than one time or play with it after the fact. So this is, I know you guys are shocked, a Wonder Woman file. How about that? So we are now hitting the center button here in scanning, and we are going to hit start. And I am going to just let that scan in. You'll see that we have different things to choose from now when we bring that in. When we have that, what you're going to choose is greatly going to depend on what your image is. There is no right answer here all of the time. It really depends on what type of image you have, what you're going to need to select. So you can see that I have, for an O here, I have an inside of the O and an outside of the O that I need to have cut, right? Same thing with the R and the D, so on and so forth. There's an inside here that needs to be cut out. So it's not just an outside of an edge that I need. For instance, my blue flower was just an outside. I didn't need anything on the inside cut. I just needed the outside. So there's different types at different times, what you want the machine to look for in the cut file that you're creating. Do you need just an outside line? Do you need outside and inside lines? Or do you need insides of insides and outsides of outsides? Yeah, I know, sounds crazy, but it actually makes sense in a minute. Just to hang on. All right, so we're going to scan it, and then we're going to get this screen. So here's the first one. This is outline detection. So that would literally give me just the outsides of my shapes. Again, picture that blue flower, just the outside lines, nothing on the interiors. But for me, that's not going to be what I need. All right. Your region detection is going to look at everything, insides, all of the parts, whether there's something on the inside of a flower. So if on that blue flower, I had a circle on the inside and I wanted the circle I think it had a yellow spot on the inside of that blue flower. And I wanted that. And I also wanted a white area around that. So I wanted 2 circles on the inside cut. That's an inside of an inside, right? Like I said, it would make sense in a minute. That is a region because we need all of those different areas looked at, not just the lines that we're looking for. We need the actual whole regions looked at. That's this guy. That's my insides of the insides and the outsides of the outsides. All right, that's this one. This last one here is the line detection. That's just line and a line. All right, that's pretty simple, hopefully. Move your arrows to get rid of the areas you don't want. So again, I don't need a cut line of the bottom of my paper. So I don't want that. I'm going to drag my arrow up. So depending on which parts that you need, you're going to choose the top section based on what you need. And then you're going to move your arrows. Everybody with me? All right. Once we have that, we can ignore an object size if we have small lines that we want it to ignore, that's what that line does there. If we are happy with what our image is, once we have done those things, we then can save it. Where are you going to save it to is totally up to you. I most commonly save to my machine. And then a lot of times I also save to my USB. So I have it twice and I can then put it into my computer because most of the time I use things multiple times. But your machine memory is my usually first go-to. That'll be the first thing that I do. So machine memory, what it will do is it will save it in numerical order. So M is your machine, 0, 0, 0, 0, zeros, whole bunch of zeros, and then 1. And then the next time you do that, it'll be 2, and so on and so forth. And it will always put them in picture order. So whatever you saved that time will be the last one in the lineup when you go to look for it in a little bit. So whatever you are saving to, it doesn't allow you to name it here. Okay. That's what its name will be, is M whatever. So that's why a lot of times I do save to the USB as a secondary thing. And then I put it somewhere and then I'll name it because I want to actually know what it was. All right. So once you have that saved, then you can go and manipulate it. So I have created that this was literally an image I printed off of the internet. That's where I get a lot of the things that I'm creating is, like I said, a silhouette image of, or logo of, a black and white image of, or something specific that we're looking for. Once I have that, then I'm going to go and find it in my machine. So to do that, I hit the home button and then hit OK, and it'll take me back to the home screen. I'm going to that retrieve data that we talked about earlier, my machine memory, and then there's that design. Like I said, it'll be right there, machine number. It'll be the last in the list of whatever you have selected. The file you just created will always be the last one. Doesn't matter whether you've got 50 of them, it'll always be the last one. So if you've got 14 pages of designs there, you can page down, it'll be the last one there. When you bring that in, you'll hit select, hit OK, and then it'll be on screen. When you hit your edit button here, notice that I have that one lonely red box there in that center. I have a whole bunch of miscellaneous files here. So if I want to play with this particular one, I need to group it so I can do whatever. So that would be a grouping feature there. If you have any files that little lines or something, you can delete those here, and you can do just like we did with those flowers in the direct cut. You can do that here. So adjust and perfect your design in the edit tools here. So go through and toggle through and go, oh, there's a little cut file I don't need. You can get rid of that and hit your trash right here. Once you have made any corrections, maybe in this instance, I didn't want the lettering. I just wanted the bottom part. Doesn't really matter what you do. This was just the example. You can resave it to your machine and you can overwrite the original so that you don't have to do that all over again the next time. Yes. So the question was, when you select something that you want to trash, do you select it with your stylus? So when you are going through those, the select keys will allow you to do that here. So the arrows will allow you to toggle through. So sometimes they're really tiny and you can't touch them. It's really, really hard to touch them. Sometimes they're super easy to touch. It just depends. But the zoom arrow, the magnifying glass right here will allow you to zoom in, which will help you see what's going on. So you can do that. And then you can toggle through there as well. So if that helps you, you can zoom in. You can touch them if it lets you. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. So your stylus is a great tool for that, but the select keys are also. So again, the question was how to select what you want to trash. You can use your stylus. You can use the select tools. And if you are having a hard time finding them, you can zoom in using the magnifying glass. All righty. So once we have that, we're going to talk about the different types of materials and get to work on actually cutting. So let's talk about them first, and then we'll actually pass some stuff out and start cutting some stuff. So Fabric. What should you use when you're cutting fabric? So it does depend on if it's backed or not, which is why I have them listed separately here. The fabric mat is a wonderful invention. I wish they had come out with that eons ago. If you don't already have one and you cut fabric by itself, it is highly recommended that you get one. All your frustrations will melt away. I promise. It is a wonderful, wonderful mat. It is uber sticky. Even the plastic, peeling the plastic off is hard. I mean, it's literally that sticky. It's a wonderful thing. It's got a gold. The fabric is got the tan color there. All right. And that is the fabric mat. It does, of course, say along the bottom, fabric mat. This is, like I said, super sticky. And that is the whole idea. If you are using the fabric mat, you will want to be using the fabric blade. This blade is very, very different from your standard blade. See if I can actually show this. So here is the fabric blade. I'm not very clear, am I? There we go. See how little that guy is? Here is the standard blade. Huge difference. That delicate blade doesn't shred your fabric. It's able to make the curves and the points and the whatever it is that you're needing, and it cuts the fabric so nicely that you don't get the pulls and the drags and the problems that we've had for years when we're trying to cut the fabric with the standard blade. So that combination of having those two is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So if you don't have the fabric mat, I highly recommend that you do invest that. So this is just my scanning mat. We didn't really talk about the scanning mat, but you do get cleaner scans using a scanning mat. It's not a requirement. You can obviously scan using your regular cutting mats. It definitely is helpful if you're using a pattern that has thinner paper, because that thinner paper can tear and cause issues if you are trying to, not shred your pattern. The scanning mat just has a paper slide. So there's you slide the paper in. You guys can see that here much easier than they can because I've screwed up the camera for them. So there's my piece of paper, and you just plastic right over top of it so that it gets a nice, it actually, you get a better picture on the screen when you use it, but you don't get all of the excess cut lines and all of that other stuff. So you get a much better picture. But that's one of those things that if you scan all the time, I recommend that you buy it. If you scan, twice a year, not worth it. So it's totally a matter of whether you do it a lot or a little. So back to fabric, sorry, sidebar. If you are cutting fabric alone, so you starched it, but you're using it for quilt pieces or an applique or something, and you don't have any backing on it, you're going to be using that fabric mat. That's at least what I'm recommending that you're doing. All right. If you are putting an applique backing on it, so fusible applique wonder, if you're a Floriani person, whatever your backing is, I recommend using either a standard mat or a brand new low tack mat. And you can try the fabric blade. It's got to go through a lot thicker. I generally use my standard blade if I've got a backing on it. whatever you do, and unfortunately, we have already had this happen, which is why I wrote it down. Whatever you do not put paper side down on a fabric mat. Otherwise, you'll be in here buying a new fabric mat. It won't come back off. That fabric mat is that sticky. If you absolutely want to use your fabric mat with your fabric that's been backed, you need to turn it upside down and put it fabric side down. And you'll need to mirror image whatever your cut file is because you'll have turned it upside down. So if you really, 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 really want to use that fabric mat, you'll need to flip it upside down and mirror image the design if you want to use your backed fabric with the fabric mat. But I just find personally, I find it easier to use my standard or a newer low tack. I do use tape as an added insurance on those mats just to make sure nothing moves because I don't like to waste fabric and I don't like to be frustrated. So I'd rather, I know Sarah's back there going, what do you mean? She's making funny faces at me, but I don't like that frustration of, things moved on me. So I am more a fan of that preemptive strike. Let's solve the problem before it's a problem. So I tape it and then I don't have the problem. So maybe this will work better. Let's try this. Maybe this side will work better. All right. So this is the standard. It's got the purple. It, of course, says standard on it. I know it's crazy stuff, right? And then you have your low tack. It says low tack on there. All right. Here's something that a lot of you don't actually know. All right. In the codes at the bottoms of the mats, it says CADX. CADX. If it doesn't have the DX, it's not a DX mat. It's for the other machine and your machine isn't going to like it. All right. So there has been a little bit of oops buying. We try really, really hard to make sure you guys go home with the right mats when you buy a mat here. But I know that you guys don't always buy from us. When it's in a pinch, you'll buy somewhere else or buy it online, or you need to make sure that you're buying the right mat because, you buy it and use it, I can't take it back and, all of that good jazz. So make sure you're buying the right ones. So you need the one that says CADX. The other ones say CAD, and then it'll say mat and whatever the other codes are. But you need to make sure that it has X in the code on the mat itself. All righty. All right. The other things that we have that we cut all the time, craft vinyl is certainly something I cut all the time. I guess we all vary for sure. But craft vinyl it's a lot of fun. So you're only going to want to cut through the color portion of craft vinyl. So it's kind of like when you go to the store and you buy stickers of any sort, doesn't matter whether they're, garage sale stickers or whatever, you've got that waxy part and then you've got the sticker that's on the top. The top part is the colored portion. That's the only part that we're cutting when we cut the craft vinyl. But when we buy it, we're buying it with a whole sheet with the waxy part on the bottom. Craft vinyl is going to be using the half cut feature. So we've got, you can see the white here. That's the backing part. You only want to cut that. So there's two portions to vinyls, whether it's craft vinyl, whether it's heat transfer vinyl, sign vinyl. There's lots of different names depending upon what brand that you're buying. All right. But a heat transfer or a sticker type vinyl has two parts, and you only want to cut through the color portion. So craft vinyl, we're going to cut pretty side up, and we want the half cut feature on. Your design should be mirrored if placing on the back of glass. So long time ago, we did cutting boards and we decorated the back of the cutting board so you could still use the cutting board. All right. So something like that, you would want to be doing a mirror image of that. And vinyl should be put, like I said, with the color side up. These are in that slideshow. This is what I'm reading off of. All right. You can use either your low or your standard mat, depending on the amount of stick. So the back of your craft vinyl is pretty much paper. All right. If you put that on a brand new standard mat, it's probably going to peel a little bit and stick a little too much. So if your standard mat isn't super duper new and really, really tacky, you'll be fine. Otherwise, you'll probably want to use a low tack mat for that. So I know that that sounds like I'm being wishy-washy, but unfortunately, we all have different levels of tackiness on all of our mats. So there's a range of when you can use what. And you will have to, what I recommend is, test the corner of your mat and do a tack test. Stick it down in the corner. Does it come back up? Does it stick well? Does it tear it? Test it before you stick your whole sheet on there. And actually do a check on there. So, and see what works. All right. So if you have it, you will want to use probably your vinyl blade. So what does that look like? We have a light blue topped blade that is, again, a really great invention. This is the vinyl blade. And comparative to the standard blade, which is, again, the black top blade, it is, again, going to be really, really dainty and fine. This is designed to be able to go around tight corners, really thin lines, tiny, tiny circles. That is why they designed this blade the way they did. If you are just doing large letters to slap on something, this one's going to work just fine. Out of habit, I now use this for no matter what I'm doing with vinyl because it works. It doesn't matter what type of design I'm doing, whether it's a large letter or a really thin line. And I don't have to worry about it not doing any different little spots or getting into that tight corner. So I have pretty much gone to this exclusively for my vinyls. It is sold separately now. It is not included in any machines. For a while it was included in one. It is not currently included in a machine. This is available two separate ways. It is available in either a vinyl kit by itself, vinyl kit, or a Disney vinyl kit. Everything that is in the vinyl kit is also in the Disney vinyl kit. The Disney vinyl kit includes a Disney card, plus everything that's in the vinyl kit. So that's the difference between the two, as well as $40. So one's $59 and one's $99. So that's the difference between those two. If you don't have that and you are a vinyl cutter, I would recommend that you get it. The Disney designs are super cute, but if you're not into Disney, there's no reason to buy the Disney. You get everything that's in the main kit in the Disney kit. So there's no reason to get the Disney if you're not a Disney fan. There's no change in the blade or anything like that.
You can use the Disney kit if you don't have a Disney machine.
Yes, they are. It is a design card. It is nothing to do with the machine. Yep. So the question was, in the slideshow, I have a CM blade and the BTWN. So I am just writing in shorthand. So CM blade is if there are any CM series machines out there. So I wrote this originally a long time ago. I added to it this time, but I didn't remove anything out of it, even though this class is really specifically geared toward our DX machines. I didn't remove the CM information that I had in there. So the CM is specific for our old machines. They had to set their blades. And the BTWN is just my shorthand for between. That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, vinyl blade is really, really nice blade to have. if you are a vinyl cutter, which I really am. So that is craft vinyl and what we would recommend for that. And then the heat transfer vinyl. This is probably my biggest thing I do is heat transfer vinyl. And again, we're only going to cut through the colored portion. We're going to use the half cut feature. You should mirror your design because we are always going to be flipping this upside down. The pretty side is always going to go down so that our color portion is up because the shiny side is the transfer. So this in heat transfer, it should always be upside down and it should always be mirrored. I do have that written. So in this case, that means that shiny is the side that goes down. HTV, which is shorthand for heat transfer vinyl, comes with a built-in transfer paper. So we cut that upside down. You do not want to cut into that clear transfer. That basically enables us to take our entire design and move it. So if I am even only putting my name on something, I got a short name, so it's not that hard, right? LISA, super simple. But if I have to move the L over and place it, and then the I over and I'm still probably not going to get it completely straight. I'm bound to screw up somewhere. Even if it's only when I'm putting my iron on it, it's going to move, right? Where if the transfer paper keeps it in position, it's 100% right every time. So that's why we don't want to cut through that transfer paper, is it keeps all of our pieces in exactly the place they're supposed to be so that when we are transferring them, they stay where they are told. Do what I tell you, darn it, right? So that's what we want that to be. Again, either your low or standard matte, depending on age, remember it needs to come off. Because this is plastic, it usually comes off pretty well, no matter which. So either one is going to work fairly well. If your low tack mat is on its dying days, it might not hang on to it well enough. All right. You can always use tape to give it a little extra oomph. But either of those mats will work. I do not recommend your fabric mat as I don't have it listed here. Vinyl blade, which is light blue if you have it, standard blade if you do not. There you go. That is heat transfer. Leather or like a sewing vinyl, so like a marine vinyl, not a heat transfer or something that needs to be transferred like that. With you have either of those types of things, either a low or a standard mat, depending on age. Remember, it needs to come off. Those are going to be, again, that new low, not so new standard. One of those are kind of where I'm leaning when I say something like that. These are going to be recommended with a rotary blade. The rotary blade looks like this. If you do not have this, honestly, I don't know that I would want to mess with them. This makes it literally, you don't even have to look at it and it will cut. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. This is literally a mini rotary blade. That's what this little guy is. And it's a beautiful thing. This was released recently, and you can now cut all kinds of wonderful things. You can use this to cut your fabric. If you are having a hard time with your mat, or it's really pushing, so you're getting shredding and you're just really struggling, this will not push because it rolls on top of it. So you could use this instead. If for whatever reason the cut that you have is just not working, you could use this blade in its place and use that instead of the fabric or the standard blade. So for instance, if you have applique backed and you needed that and it's just not doing its thing, you could substitute that rotary blade in its place and it will work. It cuts differently. It cuts slower. But it does cut and it does a very nice job. So that is certainly an option that would work. Yes, ma'am.
What about cork fabric?
Cork would work very well with that.
And how would you lay that down?
So you would need it to stick well enough. So you would need sticky enough mat to hold it while it's moving. So with the rotary, if you're looking, let me back up just for a half a second. The bracelet class that we did, we used a fairly thin cork and we were doing pretty intricate cuts. I actually used the fabric blade and that worked really well because it was a really thin cork. If we're talking really heavy cork, like you would put on the corner of a bag or, you know, that kind of thing, I would definitely use the rotary blade. And your really intricate cut might not be the same result.
And you would put the cork on the, facing up?
Mm-hmm. Yes, face up. Okay. Yep. Face up. So the question was, how would you cut cork? And I would use the rotary for standard normal thickness cork. We did use a very thin cork when we did that fabric class that I taught, that bracelet class I talked about earlier. It was super thin and we used a fabric blade back on that, but that was definitely a unusual fabric. It was more like cork fabric, not cork. It was weird. So definitely a different instance.
And you would use the standard mat?
I would, yeah, standard mat and make sure that it does not move with that cork. Absolutely. So those heavier pieces, when you have something that's going to drag, like our standard blades drag, they don't play well with a lot of fabrics, which is why this rotary blade is such a wonderful addition to our options. So it opened the doors to a lot of things. I did a class that was just on the rotary blade 6-8 months ago. I don't know, something like that. And we did felts and minky and well, actually Shannon fabric because I don't have minky, but same thing. What else do we do? We talked batting and leather, vinyl, all of those things that we basically just said, nope, can't do it. Now we can do it.
With the rotary
with
blade
that rotary blade.
And a standard mat?
Mm-hmm. Or even a low tack mat, as long as it's got enough to hold it. Like your felt, that left a lot of fuzz behind on a really sticky fabric mat. I'm sorry, standard mat. So the low tack mat, as long as it's holding it down, you know, it doesn't push. So it just rolls on top of it. So as long as your item is sticking well enough, you're good to go. And that rotary blade is opening a lot of doors to things we couldn't do before. Okay. Cardstock paper is, I would recommend a low tack or standard low tack mat with a standard blade. The low tack mat, because again, a standard mat is a lot of times too sticky. If your standard mat is on its last legs, it's probably fine. I do tape that a lot of times because it likes to pop off because it doesn't, you know, when it's being pushed, it doesn't bend well. So sometimes it doesn't cooperate. So I do tape the edges a lot of times. Standard mat can be used when it's not brand new, as I said here. Special tape. Yeah, it's this special tape that says Scan and Cut on it. This is a wonderful thing. So it looks a lot like painter's tape. It does not act like painter's tape. It does not roll like your painter's tape rolls. And so we have actually had machines come in that, so Sarah's showing you guys some of these felt flowers here. These were cut on the Scan and Cut. And this felt, you know, so this was basically cut in a 12-inch piece. And then you know, it's this whole thing and it just is a huge, huge felt roll. And then once you have it all cut, you roll it. And it creates beautiful flowers that you can do whatever with. The rotary class that I did, and I'm sure I'll do it again. I try not to repeat things too tight together because I try to vary what I do, but this is like a rose. And then how this is finished is you would put the glue on all of that, and then this back has a circle that sits there and holds that all together. So that's how you have, but I just think these are gorgeous, and you can make them out of, whatever color felts that you can come up with. And there's all different petals and things that are available. And I have a huge file of flowers, huge file. Sorry. But anyways, yes. So we have actually had machines come in that aren't working, and we get them in the back and there's tape that's stuck inside the machines that have come off of the mats and rolled up into the machines that keep them from working. And so it's usually painter's tape that is in there. How many we paint, right? You tape off a room. By the time you get back to where you started, it's curling, right? Because painter's tape does that. That's just part of the gig. This doesn't do that. And it works really well, but it actually comes back up off of your mat, even off of the adhesive of your mat. I don't recommend that you leave tape on anything. It doesn't matter whether you're embroidering, whether you're cutting, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't leave tape on anything. It becomes stickier the longer that it sits there, and then the residue stays behind and it becomes obnoxious. So that's not something that you're going to want to ever do. So by all means, don't put tape on your mat and then leave it there and not take your project off the mat for 6 months and then come back and say, hey, Lisa, you said this tape was going to come off. Yep, I did. Immediately it will come off. All right. So, but anyway, this tape, we sell it here. It's on the wall over there. It's $4.99 a roll. It is great stuff. It lasts a long time. You can reuse it. So you don't have to throw it away the first time, you take it off. You can stick it back on the side of your machine. I have it stuck all over our machine here. I have it stuck all over my machines at home. I don't throw it away the first time. I don't generally keep it for very long, but I don't pitch it the first time I'm done with it either. So anyway, tape, yes, special tape. And I do tend to use it because like I said, preemptive strike, why have problems? It's so much easier if you just fix it before it becomes a problem. All right. So I cut a lot of paper. And so that is definitely, I use a lot of paper and tape almost every piece I cut just to make sure it's not gonna be an issue. So we started talking about this felt, minky, batting, anything like that. Again, a low or a standard mat, that rotary blade is so wonderful. You can tape the edges of that stuff as well. So low tack mat and tape is a nice choice with that. The standard mat, as long as it's not brand new. So wonderful stuff. So that is everything in the slideshow. So let's have some fun and start cutting some stuff. And if you guys at home would like to cut with us, that is phenomenally a great idea. We would love it. I'm going to get rid of that. And are you gonna pass out? Awesome. Well, don't pass out. That would be bad. I wouldn't like that at all. So we've got a rotary blade, and we've got all the blades here. We've got some paper that we're going to play with. We've got some fabric. We've got both types of vinyl. So I'm going to wake my machine back up over here. So yes, there is a replacement for the rotary cutter. It is more expensive than the other replacements, but it is done the exact same way as the other pieces. So that one is got more to it. So it is a more expensive replacement. I'm just going through the questions here. I'm sorry. So there are a couple things that Brother puts out. They do have a applique support stuff. I don't use that. Not a fan. And then there is a high tack. And I'm wondering if maybe that's what your tech is. It's probably just a typo. And the high tack adhesive used to be applied to one of our low tack or standard tack mats. to create a high tack mat. I never used them even when we didn't have the fabric mat, but now that we have the fabric mat replaces that. So I wasn't a fan of them even before, but that's my answer to how do I use that. I buy a fabric mat. There you go. Sorry. Maybe not the answer you were looking for, but all right. So I use paper and vinyls more than I use fabric when I'm at home. When I'm here, it's a little bit different story, but when I'm at home, so my standard mats are used, so they're not super duper sticky anymore. So that's probably a well-used standard mat is probably my most used mat at home. And even when I am cutting fabric at home, it's usually got applique backing on it. So the question was, what is my most used mat personally? And probably a well-used standard mat is my most used mat. I love the low tack mat, but they don't stay sticky long enough for me. I abuse them too much, and so I use it, and then it's not sticky enough for me. I am a very, very habitual mat cleaner. I literally clean them during use, like during a project, and I never put personally at home. My mats never get hung back up dirty. They are cleaned every time I use them, so they stay as sticky as possible, but they still die. I mean, that's just the way of mats. So I do try to.
So how do you store your mats and what do you clean them with?
So I have slat wall in my sewing room. So I store mine on a hook. So mine are hung. They're not flat. Before I had that, I actually stored them in my rolling bag in the pockets in the side so that they stayed flat and didn't get warped, so that they stayed nice and flat without getting any bends or anything. So before I had a place for them, they stayed in my rolling bag. I used LA's Totally Awesome spray, and I can show you how to do that here after we've cut a few things, because we're going to cut a few things. So LA's Totally Awesome was suggested to us by our brother rep, and it is really good stuff. We no longer recommend using baby wipes because baby wipes are bad. They really are. They leave behind almost as much as they took off. They leave behind a lot of fuzz. So LA's Totally Awesome is this stuff. You can find it at the Dollar Tree. I also found it in a pretty pink bottle, and this stuff works just as well. I try to, thank you. I try to keep some here at the shop so that we can sell it to you as well if you don't have any. I don't know how much we have at the moment. Okay, so we should have an open bottle here somewhere. I won't use that one. Okay, we should have an open bottle somewhere. Where should we start? She's being so sweet. You think she liked me or something, huh?
Don't tell anybody.
It's Tucker. No, I'm kidding.
I'm Ginger.
Oh, Ginger. She's Ginger today. Forget what somebody said. What somebody asked me if my name was, and I was like, "Oh, that's Ginger's coworker." It's like, yeah. All right. So up on the screen, it doesn't really matter what we are going to cut as long as it stays within the guidelines of what I've got to cut here. So I've got 3x6 pieces of vinyl. So let's start with some vinyl here, because what the heck. I'm going to go into my pattern menu.
You have a couple questions.
Oh, thank you. All right. Oh, I don't think I answered that. Where do I get the pattern for the flowers? You can find them a lot online, but there is one specifically, there is one built into the machine, and it's in all of them. I just wasn't able to put my hand on it. I'll have to keep digging and looking for it, but it is definitely in there. for sure. And design bundles has a lot of them, but if you use the term paper flowers, you'll find a lot. It's cut file for paper flowers is probably the best search, and there's probably a lot of free ones. I have bought them because I use them so much. It's not something I create. There's way too many lines on that for me to try, but Design Bundles is a place that has a lot of different things. They have a lot of free things there as well. But yeah, if you use the paper flowers words for search, you'll probably find quite a few things. What's up?
The flower, if you go into the second, the one with the Eiffel Tower, and then one that looks like a paper folded, keep going down the bottom left.
This one?
Yep. The two flowers are.
Aha! I didn't go far enough. I gave up too soon. So these two are actually boxes, and these two are just like the folded flowers. So again, the Eiffel Tower, and then page down, and the box right here. And there you go. I knew they were in here. I just didn't know where. So I don't believe either of the two that I have here are those, but this one's closer than that one, but I have cut those. All right. So let's start with the Eiffel Tower. Why not? I'm going to do the Eiffel Tower. So we've got 2 inches. I'm going to make it 2 inches wide, and it makes it 4.35 tall. So I'm going to set that to the screen. There is no secondary color. If there was, there would be a B box. And so I just hit set and it shows up on my screen here. All right. So I can put that anywhere I want on my mat. I do recommend moving your cut files away from the upper left-hand corner. You don't have to always move it away from the left-hand corner, but don't always leave it there either, or else your mat's going to die super quick because your cut files will all be in the same spot. So rotate where you're cutting, and it will elongate the life of your mat. All right. It is 100% normal for you to see where things have cut in your mat. You should not see where they cut if you're cutting vinyl, because we're going to turn on the half cut feature. But typically, it is completely normal to see cut lines in your mat. We get that phone call all the time. People think something has happened and things went wrong because they can actually see the lines that are in their mat, like whatever they cut. That is 100% normal, and you should be seeing that. So just throwing that out there for a little bit of information. All right, so wherever I want to move this, it doesn't really matter where. I just need to choose a spot. What I want to do is put this wherever I put my cut file, or at least close. So I can push that down. I can put a little bit of tape, and I will change cameras here so you guys can see that too in just a sec. What I can do here is on my screen, if you have a very small piece of scrap that you're trying to use up and you're not sure whether it's going to fit, you can scan wherever you've got your piece of whatever it is, fabric, vinyl, doesn't matter, and take a picture of your mat by pushing that button. And it looks again like this. Let's go back one more time. It's right here under the word edit. It's a blue square with a bar going through it. And that is going to scan your mat. And it's going to come back through so you can see it's literally feeding in the mat. And on my screen now, it's going to come up with the picture of what I did. All right. So you can see I have tape at the top and the bottom of my vinyl, and I could technically cut that, though I'll probably center it a little bit because I have just a little bit of OCD about that. I can't handle to be that far off center. So I will probably move that. But what you can do here, depending upon what your scan would look like, if you have not changed it, in your settings, you have a background image that I can turn it off. All right. So the picture I just took, I can make it go away. I'm in my wrench settings on this page again, if anybody's wondering where the heck I'm at. All right. So here's the background. It may be on dark. All right. So dark is, I honestly don't remember what the default is. I think it's dark. All right. So you can see how much different that looks. If I have in there a black piece of vinyl, my black cut line is not going to be able to be seen. So I will have no idea where my line is in reference to the right side of my vinyl, the left side of my vinyl, or you guys get what I'm saying. So my preferred view here is this center one where it's kind of muted. All right. So what that allows me to do is clearly see the edges of where everything is, but it allows me to still see the edges of my cut line as well. All right. The only time I ever switch it to the dark is if I have white on screen, because my screen's white and I need to be able to see the edges of my, vinyl. And if my vinyl is white and my mat is white, it's really, really hard to see that. So unless it's dark picture, I don't see, and then I just see the shadings of those edges. All right. So if I had my design over here, I can tell by that image that I am nowhere near in the right spot, that I need to move my cut file to get it to wherever I've placed my vinyl. Okay. All good? All right. So once I have that, I don't need to edit this anymore. I changed the size. If I wanted to make that bigger, I could. I would go into edit, object edit, hit the size. I could rotate it, so on and so forth. All of those things we talked about earlier would go, those are still there. I have the ability to do that. One thing that we didn't talk about is that zoom feature. They really, really improved the zoom feature on this machine from our previous ones. I am at 200%. I can actually go up even more. Now I'm at 400%. I can use these arrows to move my mat. And I have these arrows that I can move my design. We had the ability to zoom in before, but we didn't have the ability to move our design zoomed in before. So this is huge to be able to be zoomed in and move to get some exact placing. So sometimes our design is really close to the size of whatever it is that we're using to cut on. So to be this close and be able to get that exact sizing is really, really nice. It was super annoying to be this zoomed in and be like, oh, okay, I need to move a little bit and not be able to move. So we had to zoom out to move, and then we couldn't tell how much we had to move again. It was kind of annoying. So
is that feature available on an upgrade?
No. Yep, buy a new machine. All right. So we're going to go okay and okay to get back to where we were. So I am all ready to cut. So, all right. So this is when I've hit okay, I'm going to get my screen to say, what do I want to do? So we have a lot of options. Of course, I want to cut, but I have the ability to do a lot of things with this machine. It's just a matter of what I want. So we can scroll through all of the different capabilities of what we have here. We're going to select cuts today. Depending on what other classes we've got coming up, we can talk about different things at different times. But what we want to do is to select our features here. You'll notice that my screen doesn't have anything on pressure or half cut. And that's because my blade is not in. I don't have a blade in. So The reason I don't have a blade in is because I have gotten in the habit of removing the blades so that I don't accidentally cut with the wrong one. We have so many blades now. It's really easy to not have the right one in there. So I have gotten in the habit of when I'm done, I take the blade out and I put it in my tool case. So I find that that works better for me. So rather than trying to remember to change it, I just have to select it rather than, oops, what I just did the wrong one. So this way I find that I cut with the right blade more often than screw something up. So I have vinyl, so I'm going to select my vinyl blade and place that in the machine. See if I don't know if this will, there we go. So over here, I'm taking that and putting that in. If any of you don't know how to do that, if this is a brand new machine for you, we just set that in and then lock the gray down right there. There we are. We've got that locked in. And now over here, you do see that I have settings here because it knows what blade I have in. It actually does know what blade because on the back of our blades, we have grooves embedded. So they have different grooves. So it does know what you have in the machine. I'm going to go into my wrench here so you guys can see what we have available. The first page that pops up is your standard blade adjustments. All right. If I make adjustments to this section here, it is going to change anything for my regular cutting. Let's go down to page 2. All right. You'll notice at the top of the page, it says half cut. I'm cutting vinyl, so I'm going to turn my half cut on. The settings that are right below that where it says cut pressure, parentheses, half cut. This is very important. If we made an adjustment on the top page and we were expecting it to make an adjustment to our half cut feature, it wouldn't do a darn thing. All right. If we are making an adjustment to our vinyl blade and we have the half cut on, we have to make an adjustment here to make that make any difference. So if you're having your half cut on, you have to make the adjustment here for it to matter. All right. Same thing goes. If you made an adjustment here and you're not using half cut, it's not going to do anything. You have to make the adjustment on page 1 for it to matter if you're not using the half cut feature. All right. It's very important that you're matching up your adjustments with which feature you're using. So right here is auto. That is your default. The wonderful thing about these machines is that they figure out the blade depth for you. Auto is where you want to be if your blade is brand new, if your machine is brand new. If you've been using your machine for a while and your blade is used and it might not be as fresh as a daisy, right? And it needs a little bit of oomph to get through where it needs to be, you might need to give it a little oomph. And you can do that here. So if you have a blade that you need to give a little extra pressure. So I used to talk about this like, you know, we have one blade in our kitchen and we have, you know, we have to cut an apple and we have to cut a tomato and you're going to apply a different amount of pressure to each. Well, if we started out and we had this set amount of piece, but now we need to cut and it's duller than it was before because we've been using it for a while, we can give it that extra pressure by giving it a little extra bump. All right. So we can remember that because the machine will remember that for us. The problem comes when we're changing the blades constantly and we're like, yeah, I have no idea what blade I used last and it's set at a different number. So if you are changing those and you have 4 different blades, you may need to keep track of, you know, vinyl blade 1, vinyl blade 2, or whatever somewhere to keep that straight for yourself. All right. So if you need to bump it because your blade hasn't been replaced and you don't want to replace it, you want to just push a little harder, you can bump your pressure. I recommend by the time you need to get to the number 3, you need to replace the blade. You're pushing too hard and you're probably going to get some shredded points and edges, especially with fabric. It's not a good idea to ask it to push that hard and expect to get a clean cut. You're not going to get the cuts that you're desiring. All right. Vinyl, it's got a lot more wiggle room, in my opinion, than fabric. You've got a little bit more wiggle room in there. All right. So if you need to give that a little extra oomph, you can, to make your blade last a little longer. I'm just like you guys. I don't like to waste money any more than you do. So I don't want to buy a $15 blade before I have to. So you can give that a little more bump. And that's how I do that. How do I know whether I need to give it a bump? That's usually the question that follows this conversation. I don't take anything off my mat before I check whether I got the cut that I need. If I need to give more because it didn't cut, if I have not removed my mat from the machine and I have not moved my item from the mat, it will cut in the exact same spot that it did before. I cut it again and I'm good. And I know I need to bump it the next time. So I always check before I move anything. And then I know the next time I cut, I need to give it a little bit more pressure to get the cut that I need. And I make note of that for myself. If you have removed the mat, it's going to be close, but there's no guarantee that mat loaded in exactly the same spot that it loaded it before. So there's no guarantee it's going to cut exactly where it did. But as long as you have everything where it was, it will cut right on top of where it was before. Just cut one more time. It'll go right on top of where it was, and you'll get the cut that you needed. And then bump it, and you're good to go for the next cut. That's how I do it. So I always check before I remove. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Can I show my tool case? Of course I can. Unfortunately, I can't sell you one because they stopped making them. This is a tool case that was available, and at the moment I can't order them anymore. I'm really hoping that they will change their mind and start producing them again, because it's a really nice case for carrying all of these different types of things. It's got room for, all of my gunk that I use. It even has my samples. Look at that. See, here's my leather that I cut and my minky that I cut with my rotary tool. All kinds of wonderful things in here. But yeah, this is that tool case that I use. Unfortunately, we have sold the last one that we had, and at the moment we aren't able to order anymore. That's what I use. But if you have like one of those there's a lot of plastic craft cases that have that type of a breaking apart place. So, somewhere to put the tools and that kind of thing. So something like that. They keep changing their mind on what they're going to offer. But it's the year of the scan and cut, according to Brother. So hopefully hopefully that will be a thing. So anyway, this is your half cut of pressure adjustments. I'm not going to do any adjustments here, but just so that you know, this is the pressure if you were doing a standard, not a half cut. So that's where that's at. The speed is here. That is anything, doesn't matter what blade that you're using, that would be your speed adjustment. I generally have mine down. At home, mine's at 3. I think Sarah's a 4 because that's not me, but I don't know. Maybe Sarah didn't do that either. I have no idea. Somebody did that. Not sure who. I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK here so you can see all of my settings here. So what we have is the time that it's going to take to cut, the pressure setting, the speed setting, and it does show you that your half cut is on, which this is the important thing here, that we know for sure that is on. If you don't want it on, it's the ability to know I need to go change that. All right. So that's the one thing you really, really need to look at is right there. So this minute thing here, it's a minute or less. So if it's 10 seconds, it'll still say a minute. There's no second reading or anything like that. So it's however many minutes or in between that less minute. And, so if it said 7, it would be between 6 and 7 minutes whatever in that time frame. All right. So at this point, I'm going to switch cameras and I'm going to hit start on my screen. What it does is it comes across the top and it will do its test. So it gets its baseline. So there's no product there. That's where it gets its first measurement. So no fabric or anything. And then it comes and it tests again. And that's where it finds how deep to set the blade. In the case of a half cut, it takes that original number that it finds between the top of the mat and where you have material, and it takes that number and cuts it in half. That's how the half cut works. So from here, like I said, I always check. So I am going to stab into my center here.
That's called weeding.
This is called weeding. So I'm going to make sure that I got the cut that I needed. So I have a very clean cut here. And a lot of times when I'm weeding, I literally just make a pile of stuff on the back of my hand if I have a lot of parts, because that works. And rather than having pieces all over the place. So if I know I have a good cut, then I can remove it from the mat. If you are not sure, you of course want to double check. What you also want to make sure is that you're not cutting all the way through, because you don't want that either. So that is a secondary check when you're cutting something that's a half cut, is you want to make sure that it's not cutting all the way through. When you are weeding, you're going to be removing the inner parts, but you're also going to be removing everything from around that part. So what I generally do is I stab the corner of whatever I have cut, and then I turn and I pull back. So that's how I get it removed from that corner part. And then there's my Eiffel Tower. So that is how you can cut craft vinyl. Sometimes craft vinyl, pressure sensitive vinyl, sign vinyl, all of those different words for the same type of thing. Sometimes those would be, sometimes the little tiny dots don't play well. If you've got little tiny circles, they like to stick to like static cling, for lack of a better description, to the part that comes up. So if you have really small circles in your weeding and you're taking that top piece off, it's helpful to hold the circle down as you're pulling the top part off and move slowly. Don't whip off that top part, because those little parts like to come with it. So take care when you're doing it if you have little spots, because they do like to come with that top piece. All right, so that is craft vinyl. And again, there is my cut. So if we want to try to get a different type of design for our next cut, let's try since we're already on half cut, let's go ahead and we're gonna cut heat transfer vinyl next. And this time I'm gonna do some letters. So I'm going to go into I'm gonna go in here and I'm going to pull up that really cute word create. So that is right here. All right, everybody else doing okay? All right, so I'm gonna go back just to catch everybody up. You doing okay then, Miss Julie?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
So back on my home page, again, I hit the house off the screen here, and I'm gonna hit patterns. All right, so house in the upper corner, and then okay, and then patterns. So down here in the lower left, we're gonna hit the word patterns here. And you don't have to do what I'm doing. You can hit whatever the heck you want, but this is what I'm gonna go find that word create. They are in alphabetical order. So this is ACO5, and I'm gonna make that smaller until it is going to fit in my 3x6 piece. So I'm gonna just go 2.75. and I will fit then in my 3x6 piece of vinyl that I've got here. All right. So, and again, I think this is probably how you bumped to, is right here. You probably hit the plus right there. So just make sure that we have the number 1 underneath that, and we're going to hit set, and it's going to come on screen. So notice that we have a picture still on your screen, right? At least I do. Yeah, because that's what we had there before. So we can turn that off. But for me, I'm going to take another picture because I want to make sure I'm putting my design on top of where I put this. So I am going to place my vinyl on my mat. This is the sparkle. This is the black sparkle. This time when we put it on the mat, you're going to want to put that sparkle pretty stuff upside down. So the pretty side is going to go down. All right, so I'm going to show you over here so you can see. So I've got my 3x6 piece. I've got that pretty side down. So the shiny, you don't see that pretty sparkle. And I do have that taped. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and on my screen, I'm going to hit that blue square again and take a picture of my mat. And I'm going to hit start and it's going to do its thing. Yeah, I didn't take my mat out. So generally when I'm doing multiple things, I don't take the mat out. So I just slap the new thing on the mat and keep going. If I'm using the same kind of mat, I don't take it out and take it back in. I just keep going. One less button. So earlier, I did tell you guys, if we are doing heat transfer, we have to mirror image the design. So we need to all hit edit. And we have a red box around our design. We need to hit object edit. And we need to mirror image that. So that's going to be row 2 right in the middle. And then it will flip all by its little lonesome. All right. And then you can drag that right on top of your, wherever you put your vinyl. And this one's going to be a lot tighter fit than what we had before, unless you shrank it a lot more. So we need to have that mirror image. All right. So now that I have my mirror image and I have it pretty close, I'm going to double check because like I said, that's a lot closer to the edges than I had before. I'm going to hit that zoom. So I am on the page that says object edit. And I hit that mirror image. I'm sorry. I hit the magnifying glass and I can see a little bit better. So I've got a little bit of room there on the left. I'm just going to move it just a little bit. All right, so I am now happy with that. I can zoom in again so you guys can see a little bit more. So again, we have the ability to really zoom in and make sure that our file is inside those lines. All right. So I can check everywhere and make sure that I'm good on all 4 sides before I go to cut. Okay. Once we're happy with our placement, we exit out of that screen until we get to the add edit screen. And then from here, we go to cut. Once we're there, we're going to hit OK. Please select and cut. And because we just cut vinyl, we shouldn't have to change any settings. Everything we just did, unless we had a problem with our previous cut, everything should be just like what we just did. The difference is we're cutting heat transfer, so we had to mirror image. All right. That's the only thing that's really different. We want to make sure that our vinyl is upside down this time. So the pretty side is down and that we mirror imaged our vinyl. As long as those happened, we hit start and we let that go do its thing. So this is heat transfer vinyl. So the transfer is already there. It's the clear stuff. So we flip it upside down so that we're not cutting the transfer. So that's why we flip it that way. And then because we flip it, we have to mirror image it. That's okay. That's what this is for. So when it's flipped, we have to mirror image the design. Otherwise, when we go to iron it on and we flip it back, it'll be backwards.
If the sticky is on top, the sticky part is on top, you have to mirror image it. The sticky part is on the bottom, you can leave it the same. So the fusible on this instance is on top, so you have to mirror image it. Because when you go to fuse it down, you'll be doing that. Yes, because this is heat transfer vinyl. So the fusible is on the back part of it. And the carrier, the clear vinyl, is on the front. Because you don't want to cut through like the glittery part of this stuff.
So can you see what I'm doing? I'm weeding away. So when I'm this side, you can read. And when you go to iron it on, you're going to put that on your shirt or whatever you're going to do that to. You're going to iron it right through this. This is the actual adhesive. And so once it's adhered, then you peel the plastic away. That's the transfer. You peel the plastic away and you're done. So that's how heat transfer works, is it has its own carrier built into it.
Because you wouldn't put your hot iron directly on the top part of that. So then that's like the protecting layer.
So I just started weeding that. I certainly don't have to take all the time, but you can see it's starting to. But if I hadn't mirror imaged it, then when I go to actually put it on,
you would only be able to read it in the mirror.
You would have to carry a mirror around to have that be a thing. And that's a kind of weird look. And I don't think we could bring that in fashion. I don't think we could make that work. So.
Right.
No, I was looking for the plastic piece, and now I see that had it on the.
It's on the front.
Yeah. Yep.
To protect
that's
yeah.
So the shiny side is the carrier.
What does that say?
It's going to say create.
Oh.
I'm not going to take the time to fuss with it because I don't want everybody to just sit here and watch me fuss with it. So, all right. So that is heat transfer vinyl. When you have that, the pretty side goes down. You cut in mirror image with a half cut. All right. So that is heat transfer vinyl. All right. So the next thing is going to be paper. I'm still going to leave my low tack mat in. I am going to take my vinyl blade out and I'm going to put my standard blade in the machine. All right. I'm going to hit on the screen over here. I'm going to hit home and go back to the home screen. So I don't care what you guys cut. Doesn't really matter. We're just going to do a pretty simple, straightforward cut. You do not have to have a heat press to use heat transfer vinyl. It certainly makes life a little bit easier. But in iron will work. You just have to apply pressure as well as heat. So there is a little bit of pressure that has to be applied. So you have to push a little bit with your iron as well as have that heat, where the heat press also does that for you. There are lots of inexpensive ones out there. That doesn't mean you have to buy one.
The steam on the bottom, the harder it is.
Right. Having an iron with less cold spots is going to be key. So the steam holes are not a heat transfers friend, because that creates cold spots. So you'll have to, continue to move your iron around to create a good seal everywhere. But it's certainly not a mandatory thing to have that by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so moving on to paper. This is just a standard cardstock. It's not uber thick. It's a pretty run-of-the-mill medium weight paper that we've got here. It is 6 by 6 this time around. I am just going to go into our letters this time. We've got some new ones. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, not me. Okay. Let's see. Which font should I pick? Let's go with this guy. I'm just going to go with an L because I can. And I'm going to set that to the screen. And I am going to go into my edit features, and I am going to make that a 5-inch. Whatever direction I hit first, it hits 5 inches because I've got a 6-inch square. So I'm going to hit my size, and I'm going to go up until I hit 5. Oops. No, I'm not. I got exuberant there. Hang on. All right. So I have a 5-inch L on screen. I am going to tape the corners of my paper. Like I said, I generally do because I find that that is easier to fix the problems before they start. And I'm going to scan that in. So I have a 6 by 6 square of paper, and I have a 5-inch letter. I've just centered it on there. So I've taped down 2 sides. Hopefully that's going to be enough. I have certainly been known to continue to play with my and continue pressing things even as they're cutting kind of around the blade and wherever it's going, just to make sure things aren't moving. So I'm going to hit OK, and then I want to cut. But this time I'm going to need to make some changes because right now I'm set up for vinyl. So I need to make sure that my half cut is off. So I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to turn that off. So now I have my half cut off. My pressure is at 1, which I think I need because our blade has been, it's got a little bit of love on it. So we're going to leave that where it's at. And the speed is at 4. So this is going to be a pretty straightforward cut. Shouldn't be too much going on, but we do want to make sure before we pull anything out of the machine that we got the cut that we want. Does anybody back there need some tape? Are you guys good? Can I help?
We're going to turn half cut off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to hit the wrench.
I lost it.
That's okay.
We're going to turn the wrench on, and we're going to go down to page 2. And we're going to go to off.
Just turn half part off.
And I didn't turn it on.
We gotta get to that spot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can't get to that until you get to that.
There we go. Now we're on our wrench.
We're at the add edit.
All right, so hit okay,
Okay,
and then hit please
Please.
select,
got it. Now we go down.
Thank you. You're welcome.
and then your wrench,
Hit cut first.
Wait,
Cut.
cut.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, and then the wrench.
and then page down, and right at the top, we're gonna wanna turn our half cut off, and then okay. And again, I know a lot of you have basically brand new machines, so your auto setting is probably just fine. All right, once we're happy with that, we're gonna go ahead and hit start. Our blade's gonna go across and test. This time when it's checking, it's not gonna do that half of the whatever the difference is. It's gonna take the difference between where there's paper and where there's not, and whatever that distance is gonna be where it sets the blade. And then it's going to do that exact shape that you have. And there is our piece. Again, check and make sure that you're good.
Why wouldn't you use the rotary cutter for just about everything except for something really big?
So do you want my customer answer or?
No, personally.
So if I were sitting in your seat, that blade is expensive.
Okay.
So I'm going to use it when I need it, but it's $60 to get the kit to buy it, and then it's $30 to replace the blade.
Also, you don't use turns like with a rotary blade.
It's not going to corner, is so that the curves, it's a lot slower to use. So it literally takes not maybe twice as long to cut everything as it would. So the question was, why don't I just use the rotary blade for everything? Which in theory sounds like a great idea, but just like your rotary blades that we have when we're cutting at a table, you're not going to be able to turn a corner the same way, and it doesn't do the same things as these blades do. So this one, you saw how quick this went. With the rotary blade, it would have to go back, and so every time it changes directions, it does a little test, and then it changes direction, and then it does a little test, and it changes direction. So it's a lot slower. It's also a lot more expensive, like I said. So I'm only going to use it where I need it. When it comes to fabric, if you want to use it for every fabric, for the most part, you can, but there's going to be, limits to where I'm going to use it based on the type of cut because of curves. Okay. So there are things it cannot do, but it is a really tiny one. So it can curve, but there's some that it just can't do.
It doesn't curve like your hand would, like she said, it's not a smooth rotation. You get like little bits where it doesn't like complete the cut.
Yep. Sometimes you'll get little tiny
like back up
jagged, just a little jagged spot where it picked up where it left off before, occasionally, which from an applique perspective in fabric doesn't matter. But if we're looking at something, you would see a jagged edge on some things. So it's a beautiful blade and it's a wonderful addition. But 100% usage. I totally get where you're coming from, though. Totally get where you're coming from. So the last thing that I wanted to cut with you all is some fabric. So do all of you have a fabric mat? Okay. So if you don't, watch what I'm doing because it's really cool. And even you can come up and watch if you want. You're certainly welcome to. So this is the fabric mat. And just for kicks, remember how I said even the plastic? I wasn't kidding. So the fabric mat has a lot of stick to it, whole lot of stick to it. So it is, I'm putting the fabric mat and the fabric blade in, and I just have a square fabric here. This we did starch all of your pieces here, ladies and gentlemen. So you do have a nice piece that will certainly, it should cut very nice because we starched them for you. So Carolyn had a lot of fun. She looked at me like, you want me to what? I was like, I want you to starch all these pieces of fabric. So I have my tan top fabric blade and I have my fabric mat here, which is super sticky. And I have a basically 5x5 piece of fabric here. So I am gonna scan this in so that we can place our design right on that so that it goes right where we need it to go. And I just need to make sure it's got clearance back there. Sorry. I really don't want it sticking to anything else back there. You are absolutely correct. And then I'm going to, of course, move my cut line right on top of that little guy right there. So this is going to be for when you don't have anything backed. If you absolutely want to use this and you have backing, you absolutely need to turn it upside down. Do not put paper on this mat. I'm gonna say it one more time. Do not put paper on this mat. You would need to flip it and then you would need to mirror image the design that you're doing so that it would work in your pattern. All right. So if that's what you're doing, that's the direction you would need to go. I have a cute little Mickey that we're going to cut out of this little guy here. And he's centered on my fabric. And all I need to do is select cut. The last time we turned off the half cut, so we don't need to worry about that. I have no idea how long this blade has been in here. I'm going to leave it on one. I think it's been in there for a hot second. So I'm going to leave that alone. We are going to just go ahead and hit go. And you can see where this is going to go, just like what we had before. It's going to test and then come here and test. The last things that I wanted to show you, and there is your Mickey. Just that simple.
Yeah, but it's not what she said. No, but yeah.
What can I do for you, my dear?
Is that Mickey out of the scan and cut, or is that one you had separate?
It is. I can show you where I found him.
I did.
So in pattern, page down.
Not on that.
Change the
sorry.
screen, please, so we can see it too.
Change the screen.
You bet.
There you go.
So in Mickey, I chose this guy here. So again, the quilty Mickey. I'm in. Do I need to back up more?
Yeah, because when you backed up, I was listening to something else. Okay.
All right. So pattern.
No problem.
Mickey.
Okay, did that.
This guy.
Oh, okay. That's what it is.
And then I chose, not that it really matters, I chose this one. Hit OK. And I chose A.
Okay.
I did not change the size and it fit beautifully in my 5x5 piece of fabric. And this is how that little guy came out. And I literally just peeled up the corner and it's literally, look at the crisp lines of.
Yeah, could even use that.
Yeah, I mean, could, put this over top of something and frame this out. And I mean, it's just beautiful. I mean, it does such a clean piece. So couple things that we can talk about for finishing perspectives. Let's, I'm going to put this guy in and So this is a piece of foam. It's a little thick. I'm not sure if it's going to play nice or not. It might be too thick. We can cut up to 3 millimeters, but try to smush it a little bit. Let's see. So I am just counting squares. I'm not gonna, I'm not scanning. All right, so I have my rotary blade in. All right, so as I said, this is foam. This is, it might yell at me. Well, we're gonna try. I've got my lever on the side up, so it will at least make room if it can. All right, and we're gonna tell it to give it a go.
The lever that's holding the.
If you all reach over here, you can see there's a button right there. That lever, you have a scanning bar that goes through the center of your machine. And that bar raises and lowers, that lever there raises and lowers that whole scanning bar. And if it's down at 1, it is as low as possible, which when you're scanning something for creating designs and things, it usually wants it to be low. When it is trying to cut something thick, it's going to ask you to move it out of the way and raise it to the second level, which is going to move it up. So again, we're going to give this a go. I don't know how thick this is, but it might yell at me. It's foam.
Machine has run through its cutting sequence.
On that?
Like in a loop.
You might have a pattern interval or something turned on multiple times. So, there's that curve, and there's the rotary, and how easy that went through that with no problem, just so that you guys had an opportunity to see the rotary blade in action, and how that works. So a couple of things that we want to talk about. Number 1, cleaning your mats. So you use fabric on a mat, you're going to have the strings. You can see I've got some orange little bits from my fabric. There's a little piece of foam that stayed there, which I don't want there. So the fabric mat, I don't usually do this on the machine, but I don't have a whole lot of room here. So let's see if I can.
How do you look like really?
On this screen over here, this button there unloads and loads your mat.
Okay.
Right there. And then of course, if you haven't, that was not Kimberbell foam. That was Soft and Stable, and by Annie. All right. Let's try this. Can you guys see that kind of? So I don't generally, with any other mat, I don't usually use that many squirts. Usually I spray 1 in each quadrant, and then if I need an additional spray, I will grab it. This is the Brothers scraper. It's called one. Don't scrape. Just move the cleaner around the mat and let it pick up the fuzz. So you can already see it's grabbing the fabric. All right. I am not scraping anything. I'm just moving the cleaner around and letting it grab the different particles that are embedded. if you leave them there, it's harder. The longer you leave them there, the harder it is to get them out. It is absolutely going to have some fuzz. So you can see it kind of looks discolored. There's no way for it to all come out. Unfortunately, that's just part of, but as you saw, it worked with absolutely no problem. So I'll go in this corner because you can't see the other corner. What I generally do is I get a pile and I put it in one of the lower corners of the mat where there is no adhesive. And then I take a paper towel, clean off my scraper first, put that away. And then I get my pile and I put the pile in the paper towel and wrap so I'm not depositing that back in. And then I just wipe down the mat and I'm cleaning off any excess cleaner. And while I'm doing that, I am also pulling out any little bits that might be stuck in there. It also grabs hold of those too. I let that air dry, and then so you can see it grabbed hold of a few more pieces of fuzz, and it got the rest of the yellow cleaner. And I let that air dry, and then it will be pretty much as sticky as it was when I started. It's that good. And you, again, can get that at the dollar store. Dollar Tree, I have found it at Big Lots. You can get it online, but it's not $1. It's really good stuff. So when you are using craft vinyl, you can, of course, take this and use it like a regular sticker that you bought at the store and just stick it somewhere. But again, we talked about, having individual letters and getting them, keeping them lined up. If this was my name and I was trying to put it on something, or if it was something like this that I was trying to keep all lined up, there is transfer paper. And the way that you use the transfer paper is you will peel it off. If you have a huge design, you'll only want to peel off part and align part of it and then peel off the other portion so that it stays, rather than trying to manage this massive piece, just manage a small portion and get it aligned and then peel off the rest. Once you have your transfer paper on, you're going to rub. Here's that pressure sensitive portion, I'm guessing where that came from. And you're going to rub the areas that have vinyl and then rub a little more. Credit cards work too. Credit cards work for so many wonderful things, don't they? They get you things. All right, there we go. So it starts pulling up. And then you would stick that to whichever item you were trying to adhere it to. You would rub, and then when you peel that back, it sticks to wherever you're trying to put it. So that is why this is called transfer paper, because it transfers your design from one place to the next. Transfer paper has different amounts of stick, varying from one brand to the next. So if you buy ours, you would want our transfer paper. If you buy, doesn't matter. If you buy Joann's, you would need Joann's transfer paper. I mean, they don't work. If you buy Caesars, you need Caesars. Absolutely. Thank you for joining me, and I will catch you all at another Scan and Cut class. Bye, everybody.